Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked on Wolves. Day one of training camp is in the books. There's plenty to talk about. After practice, did Chris Finch tip off maybe, just maybe, who might be his starting power forward? I want to dive into some comments that he made and, kind of play that out a little bit. Who could be the starting power forward on opening night for the Wolves? What could the bench unit look like? Also, ESPN released their training camp preseason power rankings. And I'll tell you why the Wolves are ranked too low once again. It's all today on the show. You are Locked on Wolves.
You are Locked on Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked on Wolves podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked on Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fanside Network. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy hump day. Happy first day of training camp in the books. Today, of course, is day 2. Tuesday was day 1. Monday was media day. There's plenty to talk about in Timberwolves land. And we're going to do just that today. We're going to talk high points from training camp, things that are out there that went on at day 1 of training camp at Mayo Clinic Square. We're going to talk about something that Chris Finch said that may tip us off on maybe what the starting lineup could look like. And I'm admittedly playing this out a little bit, but in reading between the lines somewhat. But it goes back to something I said a few weeks ago related to how I think may start at power forward. So I want to get into that. And that means we're going to look at 3-man lineups. So that'll be coming up shortly. I want to hit the quick notes first, then get into some of the lineup stuff, and then talk once again about ESPN power rankings, which are once again just off the mark when it comes to Timberwolves. So all that on today's show. Again, yet another packed show. Thanks once again for making Locked on Wolves your first listen every single day. Remember, Locked on Wolves is free and available on every single, maybe not every single, but all major platforms, including YouTube, of course, at Locked on Wolves on YouTube, of course, Apple, Google, Spotify, the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked on T-Wolves and at Beecken. That's 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. If you're watching on YouTube, that handle is right below. So all that's on the show today. Again, thanks for listening in. And a reminder that this is now a daily show again, Monday through Friday. So we'll be back 2 more times this week, and then, of course, back next week as well. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the high points from training camp. There were a couple of things out there. I'll get into Chris Finch's post-practice comments here in just a minute. First, I want to hit a couple of the notes that are out there from various folks in the media that do an outstanding job covering on a daily basis. And one of the notes that Dave Moore of the Dave Moore NBA podcast that he had was related to the different groups that players are working in. So Jake Layman, Jared, and this is again according to Dane Moore on Twitter, Jake Layman, Jared Vanderbilt, and Taurean Prince are all working in a group together at today's Timberwolves practice. Jaden McDaniels is working in a different group with the guards/wings. This is not a major surprise. Of course, we know Jared Vanderbilt is going to work with the bigs. Prince is a guy who has played really almost every position, has guarded basically every position. He talked about that in media day on Monday, talking about, I think he said his rookie year guarding Marc Gasol one game and Kyrie Irving the next, guarding positions 5 down through 1. Prince is going to largely be a 4 and a 3. I think probably more 3 in the Wolves offense this year. Jared Vanderbilt is going to play almost exclusively 4, but he can guard 4s or 3s and 5s. And Jake Layman is a 3 who is kind of miscast as a 4 for chunks of Ryan Saunders' tenure as head coach. And I think we'll still see him maybe at the 4 if he gets in the. He's not going to be, to be clear, Jake Layman is not going to be a top 10 rotation guy, but in the event he does get some run, he's going to play some 3 and some 4. Jaden McDaniels is a guy who played exclusively the 4 under Ryan Saunders. I don't think he played a single minute at the 3. And once Chris Finch took over, we did see him play both McDaniels and Juancho Hernan-Gomez, the now departed Juancho Hernan-Gomez, see some playing time at the 3 in big lineups with Jared Vanderbilt at the 4, Towns at the 5, occasionally Naz Reid at the 4, Towns at the 5. Finch wants to play big lineups, and it's the NBA has kind of sunk into the small ball thing, right? And now we're coming out of it a little bit, and the Timberwolves are trying to do the zig when everybody else is zagging, or I guess zag when everybody else is zigging, or however you want to say it. In a sense, it's the market inefficiency that the Wolves are looking for here. And this is oversimplifying it, of course, and it very largely depends on your personnel, matchups, opposing personnel, etc. But think of like Moneyball in baseball, or the Tampa Bay Rays that followed the Oakland A's Moneyball in terms of defense being the inefficiency. Teams were undervaluing defense in baseball after the Moneyball thing, where teams were undervaluing on base percentage. Now teams were somehow undervaluing size over the last couple of years. The Rockets, of course, taking it to the extreme a couple of years ago with Robert Covington playing the 5, last year PJ Tucker, and the year before, I guess, also playing the 5. And it could be effective in stretches, but the Wolves, of course, are for, I mean, they have to play big, right? Because their best player is a 5. So why not also surround him with other bigs that can help him do some of the dirty work, the rebounding, the guarding of other big men and other teams, and help take some of that off his plate. And the Wolves are at their best when Towns is on the floor. So of course they're very rarely going to truly play small ball unless Towns is off the floor. So and it also has to do with the talent you have around somebody, the talent you have, if you're able to play big. The Wolves now have that talent. They have a guy like a Jaden McDaniels, or even a Jared Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's not really going to play any 3 this year, but you could play McDaniels at the 3, you could play Reed at the 4 and Towns at the 5. You could play Vando at the 4 and Towns at the 5, which isn't an ultra big lineup, but it's a lot bigger than when they were playing Jake Layman at the 4 or Josh Okogie at the 4 in past years. Chris Finch mentioned on Monday the possibility of playing Anthony Edwards at the 4 some this year. Remember, he's grown now and is reportedly 6'6". So there's plenty of lineup combinations, but the point here of this note is Jaden McDaniels is working with the guards and wings. Jaden McDaniels talked about this on Tuesday's show. He's grown as well. He's 6'9.5", probably 6'10" now. He was 6'8" coming out of college, coming out of Washington last year, less than a year ago when the Wolves drafted him last November, as weird as that still is to say. So if Jaden McDaniels is 6'10" and working with the guards and wings, I joked about this in a piece on Dunking with Wolves, but bring back the Brandon Ingram, the Kevin Durant comparisons that we heard, kind of the ridiculous, anytime there's every year at the NBA draft, there's these ridiculous comparisons, whether it's the ESPN broadcast or whoever on Twitter scout person that just kind of says, okay, European guy gets compared to a European guy, etc. And one of the more obvious ones was, Jaden McDaniels, skinny guy, has a good handle for his size, smooth offensive game, gangly. Kevin Durant or Brandon Ingram, right? Well, McDaniels said in his media session on Monday during media day that he was watching some Brandon Ingram among other players this offseason in terms of highlights and film to help him, kind of model his game after those guys. So I said it kind of jokingly, but I mean, Jaden McDaniels is a gangly 6'10" player with handles and a jumper. And of course, we didn't see him score off the bounce. We didn't see him distribute or create for others at all last season. That's what he was supposed to be working on. And I think he did a pretty good job of it at Las Vegas Summer League several weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I guess now. But to see McDaniels working with guards and wings is great. It's exciting to see him. Clearly the Wolves are trying to expand his skill set. And I want to get into what I think his role could be at the start of the year later. That's related to the next thing I want to hit, which is starting lineup. I think we could see some McDaniels minutes, spoiler, with the bench, and see him kind of expand on those distribution skills, the shot creation skills, both for himself and the teammates around him. So I want to get into that here next. And that's actually kind of a pretty good segue because it gets into Chris Finch's comments. Just a couple of things that he said post-practice that I think are notable. And I want to key in on and get into some lineup stuff. And then we'll get into the ESPN Power Rankings thing here at the close of the show. So all that is upcoming still today. A quick note, though, on sweat block. There's a few things in life that just aren't fun to talk about. One of them is excessive sweating. When you're sweating through your shirts for no reason at all. It's definitely embarrassing. And if you've dealt with it before, whether it's public speaking, interviews, important speech, first date, whatever it might be, you got to use Sweatblock antiperspirant wipes. Sweatblock is stronger, more effective than most clinical antiperspirants. You can simply apply them at night before bedtime, go to bed. The next morning you wake up, wash, go about your day without worrying about sweat. Guaranteed. I know this sounds too good to be true, but I actually tried Sweatblock last week for the first, or I guess it was a couple weeks ago, but now I've been trying it weekly or using it weekly. You only need to use it once, maybe twice a week. It'll keep you dry the entire week. No more pitting out. No more picking your shirt based on which one might hide sweat better. It's doctor created and doctor recommended. Works for up to 7 days per use. There's a dry shirt guarantee. If Sweatblock doesn't help keep you dry, you get your money back. It's been featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters It's been a bestseller on Amazon now for the past 10 years, has over 13,000 reviews. It's currently number 1 in the Amazon antiperspirant category. You can wear whatever you want to wear. It's your little secret to confidence. It's a must-have for everyone's toiletry bag, whether it's a big presentation, a hot date, an interview. Again, whatever it might be, everyone can benefit. If you or someone you love is dealing with the issue of excessive sweating, you have to check out Sweatblock. Seriously, you got to check it out. Get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code LOCKEDON. You can also find it on Amazon or at CVS. But again, sweatblock.com, promo code LOCKEDON for 20% off. Sweatblock.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Let's also talk about rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com both at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every single customer, and they have everything you could possibly need, from brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, to even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com. All right, let's talk about the Chris Finch comments post-practice. This was relayed by Chris Hine of the Star Tribune. He does a fantastic job on the beat for the Star Trib. He says on Twitter, one note from Timberwolves practice today, asked Chris Finch how analytics play a role in his lineup combinations, and one little nugget he offered was that the Wolves tend to look at 3-man lineup combinations to help dictate those decisions. Now, let me start by saying, obviously this is, I mean, as Chris says, it's a nugget from Chris Finch, right? It's one piece, and I'm sure a large, complicated puzzle. There's so many factors. There's also still noise in 3-man lineups. We know that. There's plenty of things to consider. However, it's really fascinating. We've talked on this show about the Timberwolves' best 2, 3, 5-man lineups before, and I think there's value in each of those different, kind of ways to parse the players that appeared on the court for the Wolves last year. But given this note from Chris Finch, I thought it would be interesting to look at 3-man lineups from last year and really kind of dig into which ones were most successful. And it's tough to decide, like how many minutes played, because if you just go like every combination, I mean, there's just lines and lines and hundreds of lines of data, literally hundreds of combinations of guys that played together last year for the Wolves 3-man lineups. So I went ahead and admittedly somewhat arbitrarily chose 3-man lineup combinations that have played 100 minutes together or more, last year played 100 minutes together or more. And there's still, there's still 117 different 3-man combinations that played 100 minutes together or more last year. So I went ahead and sorted by net rating. I want to hit the first few on this list. This is at NBA.com, their lineup tool there. And this is incredible. You're going to find a thread really quickly here. Okay, so number one, in 107 minutes, which again, relatively small sample size, but not tiny. It's over the course of 29 games played together. Net rating of 20.1. So really good. Jared Vanderbilt, Jordan McLaughlin, Anthony Edwards. Okay. Second, net rating of 16. Jared Vanderbilt, D'Angelo Russell, Karl Anthony Towns. Number 3, 11.9 net rating. Jared Vanderbilt, Juancho Hernangomez, Naz Reid. Number 4 is Ricky Rubio, Jake Layman, Jaden McDaniels. 5, Jared Vanderbilt, Naz Reid, Anthony Edwards. The 6th best lineup, Jared Vanderbilt, Karl Anthony Towns, Malik Beasley. If you're wondering why Jared Vanderbilt's advanced metrics look so good, I mean, I guess it's they go hand in hand, right? One is the reason the other looks good, right? These 3-man lineups look good because Jared Vanderbilt is a good player. He affects the game in a positive way. I've been talking about Jared Vanderbilt now for a year and a half on the show. He's a valuable player. His length, the energy he plays with, his athleticism, his awareness, the ability he has to get in passing lanes, to steal the ball, to block shots, to rebound, those things matter. And the fact that he is in 6 of the top 7 lineups last year, the 3-man lineups that the Timberwolves ran out on the floor, is incredible. Because he's a guy who wasn't in the rotation at the start of the year, fell out of the rotation, right around the time Saunders was fired, worked his way back into the rotation under Finch and became somebody you really couldn't take off the floor if you wanted to be competitive. Honestly, I mean, the Wolves had such a dearth of actual defenders on this roster last season. You're talking McDaniels, Vanderbilt, Josh Okogie. That's basically it. I mean, Ricky Rubio, I guess, would be the fourth one. But I mean, now on this year's team, you've at least got Patrick Beverley that will be with the team. You've got Taurean Prince has a reputation when healthy of being a solid switchable defender. You've still got Okogie, McDaniels, Vanderbilt. This team has a lot more promise in terms of their potential defensively. Leonard Balmaro is another example. We don't know what he'll look like or how many minutes he'll see right away at the NBA level, but they've got at least 5 or 6 guys now who should be average to above average defenders from day one, and that matters quite a bit. But these 3-man lineups, the common thread here is obviously Vanderbilt. Now, note in that top 7, the first one had McLaughlin in it. We don't know what his minutes load is going to look like. He's probably not in the top 9 or 10 in the Wolves rotation this year to start the season, frankly. The second best net rating lineup in terms of 3-man from last year for the Wolves, D'Angelo Russell, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jared Vanderbilt. 2 guys who are definitely going to start in Towns and Russell and Vanderbilt. Go down a couple of lines, and the 6th best lineup, Karl-Anthony Towns, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. So Vando and Towns are right there, and then one's with Russell, one's with Beasley. Beasley's very likely to be a starter. So if you're sitting here today and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I was on Locked On NBA with, or actually I guess it was Locked On Fantasy Basketball with Josh Lloyd, of course, who hosts Monday's Locked On NBA and also the fantastic Locked On Fantasy Basketball. And talked about the likely Wolves starters. The shoo-ins are D'Angelo Russell, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Anthony Edwards. Those 3 guys are going to start. We had a bit of a conversation, a bit of a back and forth. Who's the next most likely guy to start? I thought it was Beasley. He thinks Beasley may be better suited coming off the bench as a 6-man scoring type, break up the high usage players. I tend to think Beasley will start. I think it'll be Russell, Beasley, Edwards at the 3, especially knowing that he's 6'6" now and has more of an emphasis that he's placing on defense. Towns, of course, at the 5. So who plays the 4? The obvious answer is Jaden McDaniels. That's where it looked like things were headed last year. But I'm here to tell you, I think Jared Vanderbilt could very well be the opening night starting 4 for the Timberwolves, and I think he should be. The 3-man lineups. So I think this made sense in the first place because he's the lowest usage guy you could put at the 4, more so certainly than, Naz Reid was never going to start at the 4, but certainly lower usage than Naz, lower usage guy than Jaden McDaniels. Brings more of a rebounding element than McDaniels would at the 4, especially. So I think Vando is the fit at the 4. And then you bring the bench unit. McDaniels could play the 3 or the 4. You've still got Patrick Beverley, Josh Okogie coming off the bench. And you're going to mix and match. Jalen Noel could get some minutes as kind of a scoring lead guard with the second unit. And I think Edwards is going to lead the team in minutes this year. Obviously pending health. I think he's the most likely player to lead the team in minutes. I mean, Edwards is going to run with that second unit too. But the benefit here is twofold. One, you shore up your defensive rebounding in the starting lineup, which has been awful for years. You bring a plus rebounder, put him next to Towns. And if Edwards doesn't quite rebound to his abilities at the 3, at least we know Vando is going to be an average to above average guy at the 4. Towns will be the same at the 5. You also add some defense. Now, McDaniels is probably a better all-around defender than Vanderbilt. He certainly is a little bit more versatile on the perimeter, a little bit more switchable, a little more lateral quickness there. But Vando can guard opposing 4s every bit as good as McDaniels can in most cases. The difference, of course, is McDaniels can switch on to 3s and 2s, and you feel much better about that than you do with Vanderbilt. And then it allows McDaniels, perhaps just as importantly, to come off the bench with a unit that he could actually run. I mean, he, just like Summer League, McDaniels could actually initiate offense at the second unit, or at the very least be the second or third option alongside if Anthony Edwards is running with the second unit or however that thing shakes out. McDaniels is going to have, if he starts, he's number 5 easily on the totem pole. He's like he's like option F or something like that, right? I mean, if you're talking about Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Anthony Edwards, who gets to eat last? That's Jaden McDaniels. So I think you give him a little more breathing room offensively, bring him off the bench, allow him to be, him and Okogie off the bench together can wreak some havoc defensively. You can play with those lineups and let Vando run some with the second unit if you want, but I think you start with Vando at the 4, give them that kind of guy who can sit in the dunker spot with athleticism, with energy to start the game. You don't want to have all your energy guys come off the bench. You need some of that punch to start the game as well. Vando's such a great fit, and these 3-man lineups don't lie. I know that it's a relatively small sample, but still, we're talking 105 minutes. Russell Towns Vando, a plus 16, a plus 16 net rating. We're talking 116 minutes. Vando, Beasley, Towns last year, a plus 9 net rating. So the numbers bear that out. And what Chris Finch said to Chris Hine of the Star Tribune, we can't discount that. I mean, he's talking about 3-man lineups impacting their decisions when it comes to rotations, a very important decision to them, or a very important, I guess, data point for them when they're looking at these lineups. So sitting here now, admittedly, one game into training camp, I guess still only 5 days out from the preseason opener, 3.5 or so weeks or less, I guess, out from the regular season opener. I think right now, Jared Vanderbilt is probably your starting 4, and McDaniels is kind of a de facto 6th man in this scenario, coming off the bench with suddenly a very competent bench unit. And I've talked about this before. I think there's real depth to this team. Naz Reid, Josh Okogie, Patrick Beverly, possibly Jalen Noel, Leandro Balmaro, whatever it looks like, that top 10, and that's not even counting a Jordan McLaughlin, or, if your 12th guy is Jake Layman, you're in pretty good shape, all things considered. So all that to say, Vando's probably your starting 4. That would be my argument. Put McDaniels with the bench unit. And I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. That's what I would do if I were the Timberwolves. And based on that 3-man lineup nugget from Chris Finch, and thanks to Chris Hine for asking that question and prompting that answer from Finch, and just how highly they've talked of Vanderbilt, obviously the contract he got, I think it's likely that that's what we're looking at here once we get to opening night in mid to late October. Okay, I want to get to this the ridiculous ESPN ridiculous ESPN NBA Power Rankings here in just a minute. First, so let's talk about Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar of all time, hands down. If you're not a big protein bar person, you should be, and you should have a Built Bar. I didn't used to be, but they legit taste like candy bars. They're fantastic. You can get a mixed box. You'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors, and there's 9 staple flavors. The best are mint brownie, cookies and cream, anything with caramel, anything with coconut. And there's several of those flavors, and then they kind of rotate through. There's a cherry lime flavor right now, limited edition, I haven't had yet. The cookie dough chunk is phenomenal. I think that's probably sold out at this point, but go check out a mix box. That's probably your best bet. And here's the macros. They're not only do these taste good, but they're super healthy. 17 to 18 grams of protein per bar. Calories range from only 130 per bar. Find a candy bar with only 130 calories up to just 180 calories. Only 4 to 5 grams of sugar per bar and just 4 to 5 grams net carbs. All the flavors taste amazing. They're all healthy. And also, Built Bar is the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Let's also talk about betonline.ag. We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron. Teams are back on to start another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, betonline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use promo code NFL100. From football to basketball, boxing, right on down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline is your online sportsbook experts. Again, promo code NFL100 for 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. Again, NFL100 is the promo code at BetOnline. BetOnline is your online sportsbook experts. Okay, let's talk about the latest, I guess the re-released version of ESPN's NBA Power Rankings. And the ESPN has done this kind of ridiculous thing where they did a, let's see if I can find the actual names of them, but they did a, let's see, a post-finals Power Rankings. They did a free agency one. They did a post-draft one. And now it's a training camp version. The Timberwolves haven't budged. They've been in the exact same spot. And I understand they had a quiet offseason. I get that. But, I mean, they're still number 25, and they're ahead of Detroit, Cleveland, Houston, Orlando, Oklahoma City, and they should be. They're better than all those teams. And I know, I feel like I just talked about this a few weeks ago, but like, here we are again. The Wolves are ranked right behind the Kings at 24. I don't know in what world anybody could ever rank the Timberwolves behind the Kings in a preseason power ranking this year. I get that the Kings were 8 games better last year. I get that. But if that's the argument you're making, and you're not looking at how many games Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Malik Beasley played, or how many minutes they played together, then I don't know how you could make that argument. I like, obviously that's the only possible way, is that you aren't aware of those facts, because when the Timberwolves are healthy, this roster is way better than the Kings. And I know I'm quibbling about one spot in a meaningless power ranking before the season, but this kind of thing just doesn't make sense. I don't know how you rank the Kings 24th, the Wolves 25th, the Spurs at 23. I don't like either. I would put the Spurs ahead of the Kings. But you're looking at a team that's full of promising young players, DeJounte Murray, Derek White, obviously. But like, and obviously Greg Popovich, I understand that too, but the Wolves are going to be better than the Spurs this year. I would rank them ahead of the Spurs. The Pelicans, I mean, that's kind of a coin flip, honestly, at this point. The Pelicans, by the way, had an awful offseason. So if you see any sort of like offseason rankings where the Wolves are behind the Pelicans, just disregard those rankings. The Pelicans had a terrible offseason. They took on more salary and got worse, and got older, like all at the same time, while still preparing to try and convince Zion Williamson to stay in New Orleans. I don't really understand that. I don't, if the Wolves are at 23 and the Pelicans are at 22, I wouldn't get too up in arms about that. But I would probably argue that the Wolves are better than the Pelicans, just simply because I think that the Wolves, kind of their big, I guess we could call them the big four at this point, if you include Edwards and Beasley, it's better than the big four that the Pelicans have. I mean, the Pelicans have Williamson and Ingram, and that's probably a better top two than the Wolves have, depending on what you think about Anthony Edwards right now. I would argue Zion and Brandon Ingram are a better 1-2 punch than either Townsend Russell or Townsend Edwards as of today. But I would say the Wolves 1 through 4, that's better than the Pelicans 1 through 4. And the depth isn't, I mean, like, the Pelicans have decent depth, but it's not that much better than the Wolves. So I think that the Wolves and Pels are kind of at the same level. Putting them behind the Wizards, I guess I get that too. They did a great job remaking their roster. I'll hand it to them, getting rid of Westbrook and then adding a bunch of pieces, Spencer Dinwiddie, Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma, all those pieces, along with Bradley Beal in Washington. I understand that. I probably would put the Wolves 21 or 22, either a spot ahead or behind the Pelicans, a spot ahead or behind the Wizards. I'm okay with having the Bulls ahead of the Wolves. I still think when it's all said and done, the Wolves and Bulls are in a similar spot as well. Now, Chicago being in the Eastern Conference helps them a great deal, but they're number 20. Toronto's 19. That's kind of where, like, once you get to 18, Charlotte, 17, Indiana, 16, Memphis, the Wolves aren't quite at that level yet. But if they start this season, like 5-2 or something like that, which is conceivable because the early season record, and we'll get into this, or early season schedule, I should say, is pretty soft, and then it gets really tough for a stretch for the Wolves. But if they could have a decent start, the first or second power rankings that come out on ESPN or NBA.com or wherever, the Wolves are going to rank in the 16, 17, 18 range. They have the talent to be at the same level as a Memphis, Indiana, Charlotte, Toronto, and honestly, more talent than those teams, except for maybe arguably Memphis. But I actually feel better about the Wolves roster right now than I do even about a team like the Grizzlies. So all that to say, the Wolves being ranked 25 is a joke. It just is. And I mean, why even bother if we're just going to go based off of last year's record and not pretend like the Wolves were actually, I mean, they were better than their record last year based on the talents on the roster. So unless you're anticipating turmoil, anticipating injuries or whatever, it just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, that's my beef with the ESPN power rankings. And I'm not going to do this every week, unless it's ridiculous every week, because at some point now it's less fun when the Wolves aren't good at all, and then they're always in the bottom 2 or 3, and they should be. But this year I feel like it could be a more frequent topic, is looking at power rankings on Mondays or Tuesdays or whenever they come out. Might be a weekly feature on the show, because NBA.com I think typically does a better job. I think John Schumann usually does them there and does a great job with them. Actually looks at net rating and some of those things, point differential, things that are actually real indicators of potential future success and success to that point, versus just kind of being like, they didn't do anything this offseason and they were bad last year, so we'll put them 25th. I feel like the NBA.com ones are maybe a little bit more scientific and make a bit more sense. So anyway, we'll definitely keep an eye on some of the things that are admittedly meaningless, like power rankings from around the league, as we get into the season. But anyway, that will be something we do here moving forward. A reminder that the show again is daily now, Monday through Friday. So we'll be back again tomorrow. And also a thank you here as we close the show. Thanks for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. We'll of course be back tomorrow to talk about day 2 of training camp, which I guess is today, Wednesday. So we'll be back on Thursday to talk through that. Any additional interesting quotes that come out of camp, Reminder, you can follow and subscribe to this podcast free and available on all platforms, including YouTube now. This is week, I think, 5 of Locked On Wolves on YouTube. You can subscribe there. Please do so and like the whichever video, or I guess this episode, if you're watching, definitely helps us out. Really appreciate it. It's a new YouTube channel. So any additional help we can get is greatly appreciated. You can listen on Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves, and also my account, which is at Beecken. You see it right there below here on if you're watching on YouTube. Otherwise, that's all I have for you here today. We'll be back again tomorrow on Thursday, and again, of course, on Friday. Thanks again for listening to the Locked On Wolves podcast, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.